Good afternoon, Cake Guests. Welcome to the second annual Chicago Alternative Comics Expo. Yeah. Hey. Today our third panel is Chris Ware in conversation with Jake Austen. Jake is the founding editor of Rocktober magazine and is the producer and head puppeteer of the long-living Chicago TV program. Chris lives in Oak Park, Illinois, and is the author of Jimmy Corrigan, The Smartest Boy on Earth, which was awarded the Guardian First Book Prize and chosen by the London Times in its 2010 as one of the best 100 books of the decade. Chris Ware's appearance is sponsored by the Museum of Contemporary Art, who will be hosting Modern Cartoonist, The Art of Dan Clowes, running from June 29th to October 13th. This program is also sponsored by Quimby's Bookstore. Quimby's is an independently owned bookstore that sells independently published and small press books, comics, zines, and ephemera. Quimby's favors the unusual, the aberrant, the saucy, and lowbrow. But please enjoy this great conversation. Thank you much.
Well, thank you everybody for coming today. About 20 years ago, I started Rocktober magazine, and around the same time, Chris had just published his first Acme comic, and I think we met at the Haley's Comics. At the time, was the best comic store in Chicago. And, you know, I could certainly do a lengthy introduction about the way Chris has kind of moved not only the design of comics, but the storytelling forward. And I think everybody here probably knows about that. And I think Chris will squirm if I do that. And most importantly, we only have about an hour, and I want to make sure we talk about as much as we can talk about. So
that's very nice of you. Thank you.
Just to get things started, because this is
the feeling is mutual. Yes.
He also does not want to introduce me. So
I just want to say I'm really glad to be up there with Jake. He's one of my favorite people, and you have this amazing ability to take things that I might not necessarily be immediately engaged with and make them extremely interesting and fun. So the only time I've danced as an adult was at your show with my daughter. So I actually think that's a major accomplishment as far as my personal psyche goes.
Now you'll be ready at your daughter's wedding. So,
and sorry for everybody to come here today on this rainy day and sit and listen to drone on like this. So it's really nice to be able to.
You're very appropriate for a rainy day. I'm sure you will keep the mood. So the actual C that is correct in cake is Chicago, and you moved to Chicago and really because it's the other C is
right.
This stuff
Really confusing for a second.
So I guess just talk about coming to Chicago, why you're here, why you stay here.
Well, before I came here, I went to undergraduate school at the University of Texas at Austin, which was a good place to go because it wasn't just an art school, and I had to take classes that were actually real classes as opposed to art classes like English and science and stuff. If I hadn't done that, I would have been an idiot. But I spent most of my time there just locked in my apartment, sitting between about 6 inches of my air conditioner because I hate hot weather. I can't deal with it, and that's I think probably why I drew comics, because I didn't leave the apartment that much. It's maybe to go swimming or go to class and then I come back. And as soon as I was done with that, I thought I can't stand this weather anymore. So I wanted to go to a school that was in a cold climate that had snow and had old buildings, and Chicago was the obvious choice. So I moved here in 1991 to go to the Art Institute and the printmaking program.
A lot of people who were here at that time, I mean, well, I guess let's first speak to what the comic scene in Chicago was like in the early 90s.
Yeah, I guess, we already mentioned Haley's Comics. I mean, I think Dan was probably the central focus of it. Cartoonist named Jerry Lee. He's also a printmaker and artist, Archer Pruitt, Terry LeBan, and then I've Renetti, who's sitting in the front row, my best friend, and great exponent, the reason we're all here, I think, too, as well. So It was a little bit of a different feel than in Austin. I think it was more relaxed there. All my friends were published in a student newspaper, and when I came here, it felt a little edgier or something, maybe a little more. I don't know.
So it was positive that it was not relaxed?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I was actually very grateful to Dan and Barry and Terry Archer to invite me. They do this thing every it was Tuesday or Thursday at Earwax, which is up in Wicker Park. This is like it was brand new then. They would get together and draw what they called mini comics, which were basically just it was an excuse to have to sit at a table and gossip about other cartoonists for a couple hours and to try to roast each other out. And it was essentially horrible foul pornography. And I am deeply afraid that any of this stuff will ever get reprinted because it's truly horrifying. But it was extremely nice of them to invite me and to be able to sit and watch, especially Dan drawing it, because he could literally draw anything out of his head, and I literally can hardly draw anything that I think of.
So I'm sorry to jump back and forth. I'd like to come back to this, but you can't draw anything out of your head. You use a photo reference for everything.
Okay, well, I guess it's a little discontinuous, but it's back then especially. I was profoundly racked by an incapacitating self-doubt that I have since managed over the past 20 years to overcome somewhat. I mean, I don't think it's that unusual necessarily for artists in their 20s, particularly cartoonists, but especially in the presence of other people. Drawing by yourself and drawing with another human being looking at you with two completely different experiences. I draw on the train, doing my sketchbook, and then I should say the new train cars are horrible for drawing because you have to sit across from other people. And the old train cars, you just got two seats, and usually you don't want to sit next to somebody you don't know, so you can sit and secretly draw people, nobody bothers you. And now, just in the past week, I've had two people come sit right next to me and do this. And I'll be like muttering under my breath, don't go away from now. And one woman said, she said, how much do you charge for a self-portrait? Yeah, so, and I'm trying not to, there's all these tricks you have when you're drawing people on the train, like if they look at you, you all of a sudden get really interested in somebody else, so they, make them think they're not drawing with it.
We can take the bus.
Drawing the bus is even worse, actually, because it's more bouncy, and people really are more likely to look at you then.
So
you didn't ask that, I'm sorry.
You that what I recall about the scene, the kind of supportive comic scene around that time was it wasn't just artists that were just like you that were hanging out, and these lunches and these get-togethers. It was kind of diverse.
That's true. I think that Sun Ku, who ran Haley's Comics, was very pluralistic and inclusive in his approach. Like he really liked Dan's stuff, and he also really liked Alex Ross and the more superhero artists.
And everybody went to Alex Ross's party. Like he would invite all the,
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, it seemed to be more. But back then it was the early '90s too, and the idea of there being separate camps or approaches to comics was still sort of a newer thing. I think, so.
Now in building stories, and I'm gonna allow myself to not make to not read into any of the self or the autobiographical stuff because I really don't want to think about your marriage and your kids and all that in that detail. But I do want to. I'm guessing that all the stuff, the expressions about living in Oak Park, I assume are from your experience living in Oak Park. So we're pretty clear in that comic that there is a deficiency living there as opposed to living in Chicago as far as inspiration or your character. I shouldn't say you are, but your protagonist gets pretty. She gets much more excited when she gets back into the city.
Well, it's. I was trying to communicate that sensation, especially in Chicago. I live 1 block away from Chicago. I live 1 block from Austin Avenue, but still, when you move somewhere like Oak Park, everybody's like, "Oh, moving to those suburbs, like you're dead or something, or like you've given up." I joke and say that I've traded in my sexuality for a reliable school system, basically. Kind of what it feels like. There's a lot of moms and minivans, but at the same time, I rode the Chicago bus home the other night from downtown, and it's sort of not true as well. There's Oak Park is not really a suburb. It's just sort of a very carefully controlled and heavily policed neighborhood that, you know, has some good schools and, I guess, you know, it's just a Chicago thing. I wanted to kind of play that up as part of the main character's sense of not accomplishing in her life what she felt like she should have accomplished. It's just another thing that she sort of regrets sometimes. So, is that what am I answering that right?
You know,
All right.
into a vote. Do you?
6.5.
So, what's interesting on this book is that this is, in a way, your character who is kind of the most regular person who's dealing with, you know, the self-doubt. You know, you've got this, you know, these people, your characters are usually kind of suffering from this, but the other ones have been dealt worse blows. I mean, this one seems like a regular person who you would see every day, who just, you know, has these inner thoughts. But there's still, like, kind of more questions from this book in a way than there are from a lot of the other ones. And some of them are pretty obvious. But I guess, first of all, I mean, do you think that this was kind of regrounding your storytelling, like in real life, more than the other ones, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted it to feel, for lack of a better word, naturalistic as much as possible, and to feel like, in quotes, regular life for this particular character. You know, it might not be regular life for somebody who's living in Syria right now or something, but, you know, for as far as I can say, what I know in my experiences, of course I'm not female, but I really don't think it's too much of a leap necessarily. I'm married, etc. So, but which is not to say that I think I'm providing any insight into the female.
But you do have your protagonist say that, you know, kind of one of the worst literary crimes that she's ever seen was the writing workshop where the guy was writing in a female voice.
Right, that's a joke.
It's a joke, but it's a joke. But I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's got to be the first question you're going to get with this book. I mean, you've got, like, you know, 20 pages on, you know, her abortion, and you've got all, I mean, just all from her perspective. And has this been like, is this a question that you dread getting? Do you get it every single time that you're interviewed on this?
No, I did dread it for a while when I was finishing the book. So it's something that I sit and think about and think, God, this may be the most arrogant thing I've ever done. How dare I put, you know.
And you have not been called out on it.
Are you ready?
No. I want to hear what's happened so far.
Preparing me. Not really. No, I mean, it's ultimately the book is hopefully about empathy and about trying to understand how other people experience life. I mean, fundamentally, I think that is what art is, and what I assume most of the people in this room are cartoonists or artists or photographers or writers or something, and that, I think, fundamentally is what art is for. It's a language to say, or to have a way of saying, is what I feel, is what I experience, sort of like what you experience. And hopefully through that you can create a sort of intellectual empathy, but ultimately my goal is to create an emotional empathy, because that short circuits all of these sort of scaffolds and things that we set up to protect ourselves, and goes directly to what it means to be human when we're most vulnerable, and I think what it really means to be alive, essentially. So and the most obvious difference is a sexual difference, male or female. And you can either say, oh, we're pretty much the same, or oh, we're completely different, you have absolutely no right to. When I was in art school, I had teachers tell me, you can't draw women, because if you draw women, you're colonizing her with your eyes, you have no right. And I think, well, that kind of cuts out like half of life right there, you know? So what am I supposed to just keep them off panel the entire time? And like imply that if it's a woman's voice, is that bad too? You know, I just like, there's no, I don't, you know. So I just say, well, forget it, you know, I'll just take the risk. It doesn't matter. I mean, you know, I'm just an artist. It's like, I don't care what happens to me, really. And if it ends up not ringing true, then it's my fault. And, you know, big deal, it's recyclable, throw it away. So I did my very best I could, and I think that's what anybody should do, and as people, that's what we try to do. We try to understand other people as best we could. It's an ongoing thing from children, from the time we're children to the time we're old.
So if if your goal is to get these neurons firing, to react to,
That's my
empathy.
goal in high school.
But I mean, if it's about this emotional empathy, is there a concern that design will get in the way?
Sure, yeah. I think everybody here, we're here because we all believe that adult comics is something that speaks to something other than taking the comics we read as children and making them look cooler and turning them into movies or something like that. I really believe that what we're all doing here is trying to write about what it feels like to be alive and about human life, not about Batman and Superman and their real problems or something. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just a different thing. So, but at the same time, when you're experimental in that regard, you risk losing a reader. There's a risk I think that any writer or any artist has to take. So, and I assume that I try to keep it as clear and understandable as possible. I want my drawings to be just this side of bad, so they're not that interesting to look at, so you read through them quickly. Ultimately I'm going for clarity over anything else. So hopefully it's not hard to read. Hopefully I'm not alienating the reader. I realize sometimes I might do some things that seem a little whacked out. But
I mean, clarity. This book actually is very, as far as design, it's kind of remarkable how easy it is to know which way to read in this book. I think this is probably the best you've done with that in a lot of ways. But clarity doesn't seem to be exactly what you're doing when you're reinventing, shapes and you're breaking it up into books that you don't know what direction to read in. I mean, it doesn't seem like that's your...
Well, but I mean, that's the way our brains are structured, I think. I mean, we have a simultaneous clarity and confusion in our minds, and I think it's the role of the artist to try to allow those shapes to make sense or to form the story, don't impose the form on the story itself. So, ultimately, I wanted to make a book that had no beginning or end, that you could enter at any point, and you could read through it, and you would still come out knowing more or less the same story, but it would be a slightly different experience depending on what part of you. And that's how we get to know people. You meet somebody, generally you first learn their names, and you might learn an anecdote about them riding the train to wherever you met them, or maybe they'll tell you a story about their childhood or how they met their spouse or something. You start to piece together a sense of this person. Where your first judgment might be like, oh God, this guy seems like a total jerk, but then you might go past that and think, oh, what a wonderful. It's just the way I think we experience life, and I simply wanted to try to have the structure of the book hopefully reflect that without being too confusing. So I wanted it to be fun.
Did you know when you started serializing these stories that was your goal? To release this in a way where you wouldn't know where to start?
I would say it's probably about the second year I was working on it. Originally it was just going to be about the different people inhabiting this particular building and the different floors of the building, but I realized that was a pretty simple approach and very much like a movie that was very much inspired by Christoph Kieslowski's Epilogue, and I didn't want to just imitate that. And as I worked on it longer, this woman became the main character, and everything became filtered through her consciousness, which is, for better or for worse, that's the way we all experience life anyway. It's all just filtered through our consciousness, which is not necessarily the most reliable facilities or faculties.
So in the giant size book, inside the book, the one where she is dealing with the funeral and the suicide, it seems like you're, especially in the biggest picture, you are drawing a little bit differently. You're getting a different level of detail. Now, as you've been served by this, like you said, this style, this clarity. Like, was there any anxiety about that, or did you experiment a lot of different ways that you would do that? Because these faces don't look like the faces you've drawn before.
Well, I actually used to do that a lot more when I was in art school. For a while, every panel I drew was in a different style, which was very much inspired by Gary Sanford, some of his early work. I don't know if people are familiar with it or not. But sometimes he would go from an extremely expressionistic drawing to a very rigid, straight line drawing. Sometimes he was using airbrush. He was trying to get at emotions through the imagery, I think in a way that was really interesting. And I did that a lot more obviously when I was younger, but I found it very off-putting. I didn't want to keep the reader above the page. I wanted the page to disappear as you read it. So I've tried to be much more subtle about it and to try to do it in a way where it feels right, such as speaking one-on-one with somebody. You might start to notice certain details about their face or how they're moving or any number of particular things that are you can't present in a more cartoony way. So it's just I try to do it in a way where it's not obvious. It doesn't call attention to itself, I guess. So there's just different distances at which we experience things, and I'm just trying to get better at presenting that in a way.
So, cartooning, especially with this detail that you draw, it's a laborious and a kind of a lonely process. But you have not, you have been able to have, Leave It to Beaver life. Besides this,
Leave It to Beaver.
I mean, you've got the beautiful house, the beautiful wife, the beautiful kid. I mean, everything is fine. I mean, you're not living the life of your characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, can you speak to that? Because I know a lot of cartoonists who are not living that existence.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I guess it was you would the emotions that a lot of your characters have dealt with, kind of crippling self-doubt.
Well,
you have not been crippled.
I guess not. I mean, any crippling has been my own doing, I think, and I'm well aware of that. And I still find it incredibly difficult to sit down sometimes and just draw something and not feel like it's terrible. So, and I've known that's always my own problem. As for just the means of life, I never thought I would make a living doing this. I just thought I'd be the weird guy in the art supply store who people would say, it's like cartoonist guy who's working on that long book, there's one copy in it, like somebody else, For some odd reason, I somehow managed to make a living through just a weird series of incredibly lucky coincidences of doing some horrible illustration work in the 1990s and being able to pay my rent month to month, and then a very nice guy named David Sela buying a bunch of my artwork, which allowed me to pay my rent for a whole summer, and it was just, I don't know, and then somehow I managed to, as everybody in this room knows who's a cartoonist or wants to be a cartoonist or work very hard at it, you only should do it for its own ends. You should not do it for anything else. You shouldn't do it if you want to be famous or rich or whatever, insulated. You shouldn't make art for any reason other than making art. So, am I answering your question?
Yes, but
I
another
remember what
question.
this Beaver thing is.
Well, along those lines, I mean, does it change your perspective? I mean, it certainly seems to. I mean, your book ends up in Oak Park. Well, I guess it doesn't end up because you could read that first.
I gotta say this, that frequently my wife across the breakfast or dinner table will look at me and say, I'm gonna stab you in the throat. Is that Leave It to Beaver?
I always felt that was the subtext of Leave It to Beaver.
She's told me on a number of occasions I'm somewhat difficult to live with, so
Also, what okay, speaking of sitting at the table, what comics did you read in the newspaper when you were growing up?
Blondie, Wally. Does anybody remember Wally? I don't think anybody's ever read Wally. They look kind of like Nancy grown up, which is truly horrifying. She had square glasses. I don't even know who the artist was. They had this really weird sexual content that she wore mini skirts and had like a little round nose and I don't know, whatever. But Funky Winterbean? Funky Winterbean? Is that?
Yeah. How important was reading the comics to you in the paper as opposed to
Junior Jumble? I remember that.
You read Junior Jumble every day? Did you do the Junior Jumble?
I tried to, yeah. I always found doing puzzles in the newspaper especially sad. People who did a crossword to me, frantically going through it, I admire it so much because every time I start to do it, first of all, I can't do it, and second of all, it just seems like, really, but
It's nice to have the amount of time free to do a crossword puzzle. I always admire those people that don't have anything else to do but have crossword puzzle right now.
I guess it's addictive or something. My grandfather was the managing editor of the newspaper that I read growing up, and so he had actually been responsible for adding a lot of the strips in there. In fact, he was, at least according to my family lore, one of the first papers to add Peanuts when it was first introduced. So he had all the original books and had communicated with the syndicate. I'm not sure if he actually talked to Charles Schultz or not, but my mom has told me when she was growing up, sometimes she'd answer the phone and Milt Kniff would be on the line, or Walt Kelly or something like that. Because the cartoonists kind of kept in touch with the editors, and just kind of they liked each other. The newspapering back then was sort of like a friendly old boy network or something. I guess that's not an accurate description, but they were, they liked to drink and talk about whatever.
Do you still read the newspaper comics?
They don't, actually, I'm afraid.
When did you stop?
Probably high school, I think, or something. I tried reading the Gasoline Alley strip for a while. I read Calvin and Hobbes for a while. My grandmother used to cut it out and send it to me. So, yeah, I don't. There's nothing again. I mean, I said this before, but it seems like so many of the comics to me seem like a sneak peek into the secret world of Christianity. It just seems so they have to go to this editorial ringer of not being able to say what they want. I don't know. It just feels. I mean, I'm already a constrained, constipated person, as is evident, and it just feels even more so to me. So nothing against the. I hope this isn't that internet.
Well, Schultz did a good job mixing, scripture in with subversive, miserable existence.
Well, he was a bigger thinker than the rest of us, so I don't know.
So last week, I had a cartoonist talk about when he got to meet Harryhausen. And I remember Dan Clowes telling the story about going to Steve Ditko's door and knocking on it. Do you have any experience like that? I mean, where you actually got to meet the person that was so important to you?
When I was in college, Art Spiegelman called me up on the phone after he'd seen one of my really crappy early student comics on the back of a review of Mouse that had been cut out by the publisher's flipping service, and he called me up. I thought it was my friend John Keane playing a joke on me, but it was actually Art, and we've been friends ever since. But before that, when I was a kid, I used to go walk down the street to a neighbor's house named Hank Barrow and his wife Kay Barrow, practice on the piano before I got a piano. And he was a cartoonist for the Omaha World Herald, and he's completely bald and had a handlebar mustache, and I think probably drank most of the day and smoked cigars and stuff. But he's a really cool guy and an amazing artist. And he's like a better cartoonist than Walt Kelly. And I used to sit and entertain me and tell him, draw a Superman or whatever. And he'd do some deliberately stupid drawing of like a fat guy, dressed up like Superman or something, just to make me mad. Which is, I really appreciate that. He would not fulfill what I was asking him to draw. It was really inspiring just to watch how quickly he could draw. And just seeing the hand motion of somebody do that, you learn more in those few seconds than you do an entire semester of art school. You have to see somebody do something in order to understand it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always, when you watch a film of Schultz, never penciling anything,
Actually, that's it.
Well, but the film, have you've seen the...
Yeah, that's him just doing for the camera stuff.
I know, but it's fantastic.
It's true.
They're perfect, and he does whole panels, not just characters. He can do the whole panel freehand, just while being interviewed and not looking down, and they're perfect, and they're just sublime.
Because it's his handwriting.
Handwriting.
Nobody else can do that. Nobody else can draw peanuts because it's like signing your name. For decades, millions and millions of readers reading Peanuts felt Charles Schultz's handwriting. It was the feeling of his heart going through his arm into his hand onto that page. And when you read it, it goes right back the other direction. And he's the one cartoonist who codified that, simplified that, and condensed that with such a masterful sensation. Nobody's ever been close to that.
And his writing, when his hand got shaky, his writing like took that in, I mean, the feeling it was very exciting. Like in 2000 was one of the best years of his whole career. You know what I mean? It was just remarkable storytelling that year. And a lot of it made more exciting by, his handshaking, So if you get old and decrepit, you can get better.
I just draw on the bus more, I guess.
Yeah, with that, well, especially with the new seat on the train. And the venture card, it's all gonna lead you to the bus.
I actually draw really shakily in my diary in my sketchbook because that's drawing to me. It's like that's trying to see something and that's trying to reproduce something that happened. This is all made up. This is all synthetic. It's completely created, and I want it to be at least in some way evident that it's created. And it's kind of what it is.
So what's the relationship with that kind of drawing with what you're gonna end up with in one of your books?
Well, I start very messily. I just start in the upper left-hand corner generally, or sometimes in the case of this book, especially like in the center of the page, and just start drawing. And whatever I had in mind is sort of motivates me or moves the story a little bit to begin with, but then the more I start drawing, the more it changes until by the end of it it's gone generally in some direction that I have not predicted at all. So there's a lot of messy drawing in there, but it's underneath it, which is there's nothing unusual about that. That's standard.
And what about your text? Like, how much do you know of what the text is going to be when you start drawing that page?
It's usually maybe like a couple of lines or something that I have in my mind, but the second I write it down, I'll start subdividing panels and think the rhythm's off, or I'll think, oh, what if this person says this, or the angle of the character's head will suggest something completely different, and I'll think, oh, maybe she's leaning over, picking something up, and what is she picking up, and then all of a sudden it's off in another direction. So it is the same thing that happens when we're dreaming. I don't think like before we go to bed, our brains know that, okay, now tonight you're going to dream about your third grade teacher, and she's going to be naked, and then you'll be next to your bed, and whatever. It just happens, and I don't know what that mechanism is.
It happens every night at third grade.
At third grade. Sorry to bring that up.
But with something like this book, where you've got all the characters, intertwined, how much do you let, the drawing and the evolving text change narrative?
I'd like 100%.
100%. So, anything can happen, even though you know who your characters are. Like even in a book that's this kind of elaborately intertwined, you're just letting this.
Of course, you can't plan this kind of stuff. You can't plan the way a plant grows. You can't plan the way a tree is going to look. You know it's going to kind of look like another tree, but you don't know what shape it's going to take. There's no possible way for me to plan all this out and then execute it. First of all, it'd be hideously boring. And second of all, I'd have to work at the same level of resolution that I'm working at on the pages. And I think if I do that, then it would be just as boring to read as it would be to draw. So there has to be a certain sense of, I hate the word discovery, I guess, but that's sort of true, I think, for the reader as it is for me when I'm working on this stuff. You can tell when somebody's you're pulling their leg, or it's not coming out right, or it's too heavily crafted. And this is all just from experience. I mean, for years I've tried to write things ahead of time, and it just never works. So sometimes it works for other. It's different for every cartoonist. So, I frequently say comics is a language that's intended to be read and not looked at. And there's plenty of cartoonists who prove that completely wrong in every way. So comics are an extraordinarily flexible language. It's just a matter of finding out what best suits your particular sensibility, and to try to allow as much of the world as possible to come into your storytelling. When I was in art school, I felt like I was constantly being told that I had to find one thing to focus on in art. Like, what's the one thing that somebody else hasn't done? They haven't done oval paintings or this or that or something. And I just wanted to make artwork where I could write about everything as much as possible. So, which unfortunately in art school is generally called illustration, which is a shame because it's not what it's about.
When you're reading a pantomime comic, not your own necessarily, but if you're reading a comic that is just wordless, what's in your head? Are you saying the action? Are you singing a little song? Like, what do you do when you read the panel? You go, da-dum, da-dum, da-dum? Or do you say, oh, now she's doing this? Like, how does it sound in your head when you read something like that?
That's a very good question. I mean, that's how for a while, I quit using words specifically for that reason, because I noticed that when I read comics, it didn't have words. I heard sounds in my mind, and it wasn't the sounds of the characters shuffling or picking things up and setting them down. It was a peculiar rhythmic music that I couldn't make into real sound, but it was there nonetheless. There's definitely some internal harmony to comics that is analogous to music and is very much about composition. Music is ultimately, at least I think, somewhat about composition and about math or geometry too. So I try to keep that in mind with every single page I do, and now when I use words, I try to incorporate the words into that rather than have the words describe the action. So it's a useful exercise for cartoonists to do. I think if you feel that maybe a little bit uncomfortable or not sure what to do, just simply try to write a story that doesn't use any words at all and see what you can communicate and how it feels when you read it back as you're working on it. So.
And you're a fan of ragtime music and kind of pre-vaudeville and vaudeville, minstrel and vaudeville, like all these. Do you listen to these kind of lo-fi recordings or kind of surviving recordings? Is this something that you would listen to while you were working?
No, I don't listen to it while I'm working. I don't listen to anything when I'm working, because if I do, it affects the way that I'm working.
So you need silence when you're working.
Yeah, you have to, because it's a medium intended to be read, and anything that's out there that could in any way influence your emotions while you're reading it you'll think you're putting that into the work, but you're actually not. So.
But something is always going to be affecting your emotions.
That's true, but it's best to kind of keep it at a low level, I think, that's all. Especially, with really loud music, it's just not going to help you. So I learned this again from experience, where I work on a script and think, I finally did something moving. I was listening to Schumann or something like that, and I'd read it again, it's completely dead. So you could
how are we doing on time?
That's not what Jake wanted to hear.
12:37. All right, so we got a few more.
Say, shut up.
We got a few more minutes. So, okay, this might be the dumbest question, but I have just, so I know I knew I was going to do this for the last few months, so I've left the book on my nightstand, and I'm reading it over. I read it over this week, and now this is done. What am I supposed to do with this book? Like, where do I put it away? I don't know. No, but I mean, like where does one fit this book in their house? It's not gonna go on any bookshelf. It's
not my problem. I don't know. I don't know.
But I mean, how did you envision this? You made an object. You made a giant art object that's bigger than.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, people buy giant steel sculptures. I figure,
They do.
I don't know. It's not that big. It's
it feels awfully big. It certainly doesn't sit on. I guess I can put it with like.
It feels bigger to you than it's just. I guess just get rid of it. It'll grind up. It'll
make a table out of it.
Holes. Yeah, I don't know. And I kind of joked on the back cover of the box itself. It showed some of the books like all over dispersed all over the house or something like that. I guess it's been misread as the order in which you're supposed to read it.
Yeah,
that was a little mistake. But no, I don't know. It's up to you. Okay, I'll try. It is pretty easily. I think it'll fit in a standard size trash bag pretty easily. And sugar compost around it or whatever. Which is one of the things I like about comics, and one of the reasons I think a lot of people here probably draw comics is because it's an unintimidating medium. It's either good or it's trash. And in art museums, a painting is either good or it's worth a whole lot of money. And it's still going to be worth a whole lot of money, even if you don't necessarily think it's good because somebody decided that it is. So comics don't have that problem, and there's a genuine, direct interchange there that I deeply value. I think there's an honest relationship with the reader in comics that I think is extremely important, especially in our current culture in the world. So.
When you were in the reader in New City, did you ever actually see your comic in the gutter?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So what's that experience? Physical, that comic is actually balled up in the gutter.
It seems appropriate. So I never actually saw anybody read it, though. I'd be on the train and I'd see like somebody going through music and I'd go, 2 more pages. And then you go, you know.
It's really hard to stop in New City on anything, so I think the rhythm is just there.
Yeah, I think, whatever. It's probably better than seeing somebody read something with a look of horror or disgust on their face or something. So, yeah, I try not to think about people reading my stuff. I frequently get asked, "Who's your audience?" I don't know. I don't take like a survey or something. I can't decide. Like you just, as a writer and artist, you do what you hope is the most moving, or particularly to you and possibly to other people. You cannot think about who's reading your stuff. You can aim it at certain people, because then you're immediately tied to that imaginary ideal, and you're giving over a certain degree of freedom and allowing yourself to explore your own heart. And that's the first thing you should never do as an artist.
The first thing you should never do.
I can't
think
talk
about
public.
your.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but I just want to. So, I mean,
Sorry.
what is the question that you least enjoy getting at these public things? Just because you're about to get questions, I want to make sure they don't.
I don't know. Question I don't mind. I guess if I thought about that, I could probably come up with something. But yeah, I don't know. I think question's fine.
So a lot of the people that, when you were coming up, that were, kind of movers and shakers, have left Chicago. People, you think about, Terry was very ambitious, Terry LeBan was very ambitious, and Dan Cloud was really inspirational to everybody. And, Jessica was incredibly ambitious, Jessica Abel, and they've all kind of moved away. But, a few people have stayed, but you really set down roots here.
Yeah.
And what about Chicago? I mean, you talked about why it was exciting in 1992. But what about Chicago, being welcomed in with these people? But why is this a good place to continue to do your work?
Because it's not really expensive. It's an unpretentious place. People are unaffected. There's very little in the way of like a society in which to try to claw one's way up to. You can't get away with anything here. You can't pull the wool over anybody's eyes. To me, it feels like the most honest American city, and I really deeply value that, and I prefer that. Plus, my friends are here, so I don't know. I could live in New York, maybe. It just seems so expensive and intense. So I like staying at home. So I don't know. But you can buy a house here pretty cheap. So is that okay? I don't know. I don't like it. It is kind of weird that there seems to be Chicago doesn't seem to be able to hold on to a really strong visual arts, for lack of a better word, the word you're using, scene. I think like maybe in the 60s and early 70s there was the Harry Who or something like that, which is important. That's actually one of the reasons I came to Chicago, was to take Jim Nutt as a teacher, because I felt like the Harry Who were the only artists in American fine art who used comics as an expressive medium. They didn't use it as a stand-in for the stupidity of American culture. And American culture is stupid. We know that already. It's just, it's not something we need to be reminded of. It's pretty evident everywhere.
And they also, illustration wasn't like a dirty word for the Harry Who artists.
Well, it might have been, but they
but they were doing illustration work as fine artwork. Their work looked like, it was.
I think actually, in a way, I can see what you're saying, but I think actually they weren't. They were actually using the cartoon, some aspects of cartoon image making, to create actual images that meant what they said, which at that point in the art world was a pretty daring thing to do. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I think a lot of people, myself included, both like to read and do comics. Because when you see an image in comics, generally speaking, it's what it says it is, which is kind of, it's unusual in fine art, at least. It's not unusual in movies and television.
What other artwork do you do outside of comics to express yourself?
I don't know. I don't know about expressing myself.
Or why do you do it? You do some other things.
I occasionally make little sculptures and stuff, and sometimes do drawing. I draw my sketchbook. I used to do it a lot more. I used to do mechanical sculptures and paintings. I was the worst painter on the face of the earth, so I kind of gave up on that. Plus, I found it difficult to make paintings that had a visual, I don't know, authority to them or something. I don't.
Now, because you said that you really can't be working for an audience. You have to be working for yourself with your comics. Is it any different when you're doing work that you're not going to show anybody? Like, does it feel different doing this, knowing that it's going to stay in your house and you're not going to be showing it to people?
I guess, but like I said, I keep a diary. I've been keeping a comic strip diary for 11 years now, and I'm not going to print it. And if
Not gonna print it.
No, and if anybody, I mean, it's basically not for my daughter, and if anybody sees it, it'll have to be after I'm dead. So, and I kind of feel like I'm always doing work for after I'm dead anyway. Honestly, I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, I think ultimately that is the artist's responsibility, is to try to make work that endures beyond oneself and communicates a feeling of life at the time that one was. And that's why I read books. That's why I want to read a book from the 19th century. I want to find out what it felt like to be alive in the 19th century. What was different? What was the same? Are we that much different? Are we that much the same? I think ultimately that's what one should aim for, whether one does it in a naturalistic way or in a different way. So.
Well, we're going to see if people agree. Because we will take a question
It was
for
loud
around
enough.
15 minutes.
I apologize.
Yes, sir.
You probably get this question a lot, but I've never seen you speak before. First of all, I love your stuff.
Oh, wait, he's going to bring you a microphone. There you go. You will be amplified.
First of all, just to say I love your stuff.
Well, thank you
Great
very much.
inspiration. As you say, you probably get this question a lot, but I haven't heard your answer. Your sketchbook style feels very analog, very loose, and this style here feels very, very, very tight to the point of looking digital. And I'm just, if you could maybe just talk a little bit about, I'm really curious about how you approach this. The sketchbook style seems kind of obvious, self-evident about how you're doing it, watercolor and stuff like that.
It's again, like it's in the sketchbook. Generally I'm either trying to draw things that have happened to me and I'm remembering them, or I'm trying to draw something that's in front of me. So I'm trying to find what I'm seeing on the page, and that's I'm trying to search for the image. In this case, like I said, it's a synthetic sort of thing. It's creating it from nothing. I want it to look synthetic. At the same time, I'm also trying to go for what I believe are codified ideograms that we all have in our minds that not only affect our language, but affect our perceptions. I believe that as adults, that these images actually reduce the amount of information that comes in our minds. We don't actually see much as adults. As children, we're wide open to the world. You can spend a half an hour looking at a leaf as a little kid. As an adult, you say leaf and put it down. And when I say leaf, you thought of a leaf in your mind, I'm sure. And whether it was shaped like this or shaped like an oak leaf, that image is there. That actually affects how you see people. And if you see somebody you haven't seen for maybe 20 years, you'll have that experience where you're like, wow, they look different, but they look the same. There's something in your brain that's kind of projecting outward. So I'm trying to get at that in comics and try to use that kind of invisible image that's in everybody's mind and that's in between reality and our minds at all times of the day, and try to turn that into something that's an experience, I guess. So and I think that's where comics comes from. I think that's where the original impulse comes from.
Is your mind wandering when you're actually doing the rendering, or if you're coloring in black, or are you really focused on moving this story and thinking about stuff?
No.
Or are you just thinking about everything?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like if I'm inking it in, I for some reason tend to focus on kids who were mean to me in 4th grade. I don't know why. When I'm writing, I'm much more involved in the story itself and where it's going. Or sometimes I'll think about my own experience. They become inseparable, actually.
Do you have anybody else? I think we got a couple people over here. Maybe bring the mic and first person, then pass the mic over.
A lot of your work is very diagrammatic, and I was wondering if you started off using that or using that because I know you said it's very stream of consciousness, that you would start from one point in the page and then work outward or inward. I was just wondering how you developed that, or if there was any influences to that process that you used.
Yeah, like I used to draw different styles, try to combine different styles on the page. For a while I drew directly in ink without any penciling, without any planning it. I still don't plan, but I wanted that to go to penciling. I just found that it suited my temperament. It suited the fact that I was writing fiction in comics, which not necessarily everybody does. The books that we think of as like the highest pinnacle in the medium, and I would agree with like Mouse. That's actually, it's not fiction. I mean, it goes to art's filtering consciousness, but it's a memoir. So what I'm writing is entirely made up. So, and I want the drawings to reflect that. I want them to be unappealing images. I want them to not linger. I want you to read through them as quickly as possible. I want you to spend a lot of time on it. So, if that makes sense. Oh, and as far as inspiration goes, definitely Charles Burns, Ernie Bushmiller, like our cartoonist named Ray Gatto did a strip called Ozark, which is sort of a weird ripoff of Roll Abner, but it was about some sort of like, Appalachian hick who played baseball, but the story meant nothing. It's just this really precise way of drawing. It had this kind of eternal quality in every panel where everything was sort of frozen in infinity or something. So I try to go for that sensation of something being frozen in time is to be there at all times and one time at the same time. So
That story is really good in the Ozark comic book. It is a good story.
Only person who's ever read that. So.
I was just curious, are there any guilty pleasures that you think your parents might not know about?
That's interesting. My friend Seth would ask me that question when I was on stage with him, and then he apologized later. I think
You can apologize right now.
No, that's right. He's asking guilty pleasures. I think it's funny, the whole idea of guilty pleasures itself. Why would we feel guilty about it? I think a lot about my great-great-grandmother. I have her diary, and she lived in the Nebraska prairie and endured unbelievable hardship. I think every month somebody got really sick or died. There was no food. She was just ineluctably lonely and miserable. And I think, did she do all that so that I could watch Game of Thrones or whatever? Like, it just doesn't seem right. So I think the whole idea of guilty pleasure is sort of an overall cultural awareness of that something is pretty profoundly wrong with the way America has gone and where it is at this moment. So, which is not to say, I don't mean to judge your question necessarily, but it's a funny idea, I wonder what her guilty pleasures were. So.
You want a Bible?
Yeah, right. I don't think they even existed back then. So.
What we got? The mic is being delivered.
I was interested in hearing you say that you basically make it up as you go along rather than having design in mind. And yet you have a reputation for being both macro and micro in that you can see the whole page as one design, and then when you start to read the story and you have to, go image by image, etc., blah, blah, blah. But the fact that it looks so good as a whole, there seems to be intention involved in that,
Yeah, there is, but I just don't know what it is. I think that's why we become artists.
It just comes out like that, it just ends up like that?
Yeah. I don't know how it could happen any other way. Honest to God, I couldn't plan it. You can't plan these things. You can't, imagine, like, if you couldn't build a plant cell by cell. Somehow you have to get a thing that the whole point of making art is to try to make art that's alive in some way. And in comics, that's especially both easy and difficult, because as you read it, you're producing the sensation of life. But the overall structure of the thing itself also has to be alive in some way. I really struggled with that for a long time. I think Philip Guston as a painter is one of the best examples of creating paintings that are alive, and he very much was struggling with that as well, to try to make an image that had its own, literally its own DNA built into it. So, And at a certain point, you kind of have to throw up your hands and give yourself over to it, and then all of a sudden you kind of figure it out. So I don't know if that even makes sense. I'm not trying to sound mystical or anything, but it is why we make art. You can't control these things necessarily. You have to give yourself over to the structure of your own mind. And your mind is a very organized thing. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be able to sit here and communicate. Language is it's almost like a damaging scaffold in our minds, but it's how we communicate, and it's stuff in your brain is very, very carefully put in place. And if you just kind of relax yourself a little bit, which is a weird thing I realize for me, these things, because I'm obviously one of the least relaxed people there is, and allow that to come out in your artwork, I think you'd be very surprised at the connections that appear that you would never plan. They're there, they're in your mind already. It's just a matter of letting them happen.
I think we can take a couple more questions, and then Chris and I will be in the other room, and so you can ask him stuff and ignore me. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Who's got the mic? Okay, there you go. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I saw this gentleman.
So you mentioned with the Chicago, or part of the reason was the old buildings, and obviously the built environment, and especially sort of vernacular environments and homes seem to be pretty important in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to where that interest came from, or maybe how it feeds into this idea of empathy and sort of like explaining the lived experience in New York.
Part of it too is just trying to understand what life was like 100 years ago, how people lived back then. And the closest thing you can get to that is the building, because it's something that many lives have been lived out in, and you can kind of see evidence of that. You can also get a sense of how is it that people wanted to live 100 years ago? What was different for them? What did they want out of a structure? Why do we make buildings that are all right angles anyway, when you really think about it? There's very little analog for that in the actual physical world, with the exception of crystals. It has more to do with the way that our thoughts are organized, I think. And the reason we structure buildings certain ways is because they reflect the way our thoughts are structured. So when you're looking at a building, you're looking at the way that people thought 100 years ago. It was the most sympathetic structure through which they could live their lives. And you look at the way we build buildings now, or the way buildings were built in the horrible 1980s, you can see how people were thinking then. So it's a weird thing. It's like the shells that we snails leave behind or something like that. So
The powers of crystals are how you do this? Okay.
yeah,
I got something out of this.
Boom I wear when I'm working. So.
Okay, I think we have time for one more.
I just want to say one thing too, that I feel like, as cartoonists, which again I assume most of the people in this room are, it's like there's a certain power to being able to sit at a table and just have a pencil and a piece of paper in your mind and do something, especially in a world where every new financial anim we're told about the new iPhone that has a slightly higher resolution, and we're supposed to get excited about that. It's like, what does that really mean? You think about a phone having more detail. Like, why? Is that something we're supposed to be happy about or something? Resolution is about the mind. There's no greater resolution than the honesty of yourself trying to get something on paper to communicate with somebody else, I think. So yeah, I'm acting like a crazy person. Sorry.
So does someone have a microphone?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What I wanted to ask was how comics and cartoons have changed over the years, and one of my joys has been sort of exposing my daughter to giving her My Peanuts books or showing her old Bugs Bunny cartoons to cultivate her sense of humor in that. And since you're a father, I wonder, what do you expose your child to? What do you show her?
She's been watching a lot of Looney Tunes lately. Actually, she was playing Powerhouse on the piano yesterday, which is a really weird experience. And she likes Peanuts. She loves Little Lulu. She just read the complete works of Hergé 24 hours ago. So she loves Tintin. So.
And I also brought a few issues of her essay on Tiny Tim that Chris illustrated for the last issue of Rocktober. So I got a few of those. So she likes Tiny Tim.
Yeah. I thought about buying her some Archie comics last night. I just looked at it and said, I don't want her to read that stuff. She even, when we'll be in the car, she'll point and say, look, Dad, a teenager like is a criminal. Comics have changed a lot. Yeah, I'm not just, well, a guest here who everybody should be like incredibly grateful to be able to meet is Kim Deitch. He's one of the great geniuses of comics, no questions asked. His fiction, and I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I was doing now if it wasn't for Kim Deitch. He has created a world, a fictional, imaginary world that there's no rival to it in comics. It spans not only his almost 50 years of working, I think, but also over 100 some years of actual fictional time, and it's all interwoven. He's a master storyteller, and just like he's one of my very favorite cartoonists. And the fact that he's here, and there's younger cartoonists here, and then there's, me in the middle somewhere, is just really gratifying. I never thought that comics, it's just such a living language to me. Like it's still developing, there's still people doing new things with it. It feels alive. It's about, people, it's stories to read. It's not like when I was in school and my teachers told me that painting was dead, so it's a good thing.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I think everybody here appreciates you being generous with your time. And I think Chris will be in the other room. And thank you guys for indulging the two of us talking about this. Thank you.
Everyone, Chris Ware will be at the Drawn and Quarterly table. He's only there for a limited time, so only the first 30 people online will be able to visit his signature. Thank you very much. Can we get a microphone, please, for Chris?
They just sent me, so I'm not gonna do that, so I'll just stay there.
Okay, well,
I'm just gonna say that sounds really mean, and I'm not gonna, I'll just sit there and give them the sign book. I'll sign a book. It's not like a, important appointments or anything. So, but okay.